Hi, Rochelle. I'm sorry to jump in, but I believe you're on mute. Can we just restart?
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Anyway, technical glitch on my side. Good. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to the Alicorn Leadership Summit 2021-22. I'm Rochelle D'Souza, Managing Director at Lighthouse Funds. We launched the Alicorn Summit same time last year to celebrate gender diversity and convene thought leadership. This year, the theme is Women Leaders Gen 2.0. Let me give you a little exercise. Try and list out some of the most iconic male investors in India. Done? Now try to list down the same list for women. Not as easy as the former, right? Very few women have risen to the top, and even fewer icons have broken through the clutter and the glass ceilings. Now, that's the reason it is imperative that we focus on women leaders Gen 2.0. And we have an exciting panel for you of women leaders who will talk to you about their journey. But before I get to that, let me introduce and welcome Nupur Garg, the founder of WinPE, who has been holding the baton for gender diversity for our fraternity. Welcome, Nupur. It has been 2 years since WinPE has launched. Would you like to share your experiences? And why are we focusing on this theme this year?
Hi, Rochelle. A very good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to our viewers. I'm delighted to welcome you back at the ALS, as we call it. The first ALS that celebrated WinPe's first anniversary was extremely powerful in the insights that it brought forward on building businesses with DNI at the core, learnings and lessons from across the globe that we can all benefit from. ALS2 will center the conversation on enabling increased participation in leadership positions for women. In the last 2 years of WinPE, we have worked closely with multiple stakeholders in the PEVC industry and actively catalyzed change and specific actions to support DNI. For example, our member firms have changed how they hire. They have put in place key metrics on diversity that they measure and share data with us on. We organized more than 30 workshops in our first 18 months that more than 3,500 women found interesting. And they had an average NPS of 96% to show. But at the same time, we have kept our ears and minds open to what each of our stakeholders is saying. One of the key messages that we have heard, and very consistent with research, my own experience, and various anecdotes, is how the paucity of women in leadership roles is a big challenge that both firms and younger women are faced with. So, for firms, it is about integrating diversity within decision making within the culture. The women within teams are hugely affected by the firm culture, of course, but it also creates a lack of role models, mentors, sponsors, and networks. And we should not forget that having women investors in decision making roles is a key step to enabling funding and support for women led businesses. So, with that in mind, we were quite clear about the theme. We were also quite clear that we wanted to start the discussion with a celebration of the women who have broken the glass ceilings and not only made it to the top of their firms, but also created a lasting impression on the industry. There are very few of us out there, but there are at least a few, and I want to showcase that. And it is such a pleasure to watch women like you, Anshul, Nitya, Roshni, and our panelists here take the helm.
Thank you, Nupur. And I can't agree with you more. I've been in this industry for more than a decade. And when I first joined the fraternity, I was the only woman in my investment team, only woman in a boardroom, pretty much the only woman in every meeting. However, over the course of the years, the situation has been improving. And thanks to all the accelerated efforts that WinPE is doing, at least we fixed the problem of the entry funnel, which all of our member partners have been talking about. Now I operate in the growth equity side of investing, and as a woman partner, if I want to reach out to my woman peer, the roster is extremely limited. Now, let us take a step back and evaluate why is that the case. I think one of the main reasons earlier was that our entry funnel wasn't fixed, but it is now a work in progress. But to make matters even worse, is that in this ever demanding job profile, our biological clocks and our career clocks are always at loggerheads. Now, this is a very intricate dynamic, and firms need to understand and work around it and help us women get to the top versus losing them. I think we need to set the diversity flywheel in our investing ecosystem. More women into the fraternity, leading to more women in leadership roles and decision making roles, which then leads to funding women led organizations. And then that leads to hiring more women at CXO levels. And then that virtuous cycle keeps going on because you have more women
Absolutely.
role models to look at. So I guess, at the end, we need to make that cycle virtuous. Now, to speak more about this, we have a distinguished panel of my peers, women leaders who have broken the molds to start their own funds and lead some of the leading funds. And we have with us here today Pearl Agarwal. Pearl is the founder of Exemius Ventures, a micro VC fund focused on early stage companies in health tech, ed tech, gaming. Prior to starting Exemius, she spent a decade across financial services in the US and UK. Welcome, Pearl. We have with
Thank
us
you.
Lavanya Ashok. Lavanya is a partner at Trifecta Equity Fund. She joined Trifecta to build out its growth and late stage equity platform, to consolidate its position as the financing partner of choice for the new economy. Prior to joining Trifecta, she was managing director, private equity at Goldman Sachs. Welcome, Lavanya. We have with us Shushma Kaushik. Shushma is a partner at Avishkar Capital and brings with her over 18 years of diverse experience in the field of early stage investing, small business incubation, and consulting across sectors. Shushma has worked to identify, manage, and exit a large number of companies. This entire panel is today moderated by Pooja Sarkar. Pooja has been a financial writer for over a decade and works at Forbes India as senior assistant editor. Pooja writes on global private equity funds, Indian deals ecosystem, and financial investigative stories. Welcome, ladies, and Pooja, all over to you.
Thank you so much, Rochelle. Thank you. And welcome, ladies. Welcome here. And I will just get started. And I'll take the first question directly to Pearl on can you just talk about the journey of starting your own micro VC firm? Because you weren't really doing micro VC back in UK. So could you just talk about your journey of launching your fund?
Yeah. No, thank you, Pooja. Definitely there has been, I would say, a lot of unlearning and learning as well. So, really the idea of starting something along these lines had entered when I started my first job. My first job was at an endowment fund where we were investing in other VC funds and private equity funds. So fresh out of college, I would be meeting all of these managing partners and really like hearing them talk about how they were going to build their funds, how they were looking at sourcing. And I knew at that point that this was something that really excited me. Of course, I sort of went about my career in investment banking and private equity, but it was between my time in New York and London that I had spent about 6 months in Bombay, because we were looking to acquire a fund manager in India. And during that time, I'd spent more time actually speaking with entrepreneurs than fund managers, and realized that the growth in India was phenomenal. What we were seeing during that time was way different than what I had seen when I had left in 2010. And I knew that I wanted to move back and be part of this ecosystem. So while I had moved to London, the entire time at the back of my head, I knew that I wanted to move back. I wanted to work with entrepreneurs here. So continued to do that, and continue to sort of invest with them in angel capacity, work with them on their GTM before moving back in 2020 to start Exemius. And since then it's been an incredible journey. We are in this massive bull market, and it's been quite exciting.
Sure. I'll come back to your journey a little later, but I'll go to Lavanya right now. Lavanya, when we spoke some time back, you talked about how you were so excited about investing when you worked in a Silicon Valley. Then what made you come back to India? Because you were so excited about in Valley. Why you're back in India? And what was it to be part of Goldman's initial investment team?
Absolutely, Pooja, and you know my story. But I thought it would be lovely to share an untold anecdote. So I was doing my hedge fund job, having the time of my life, and I used to hike in Muir Woods to think about work, to think about life. And the great naturalist John Muir once said, "You know, all the paths you take in life, let some of them be dirt." And my life in the US was beautiful, but it was predictable and it was orderly. And I felt like I was using the investment playbook that had already been written. But when I thought about coming back to my accustomed earth, which is India, in all its chaos, about 12 years ago when I came back, the investing ecosystem was just about getting started on the private side. I felt there would be so much more of a chance to contribute to creating what was a very nascent ecosystem. And so that's how I made that tough decision. I'd been through the boot camp of investment banking analyst training at Goldman in New York. I'd had this wonderful experience being initiated into the craft of investing at my hedge fund SPO partners, and then I felt it was a nice time to turn around and the classic immigrant dilemma whether to stay and put down roots or go back. I chose to come back and have never looked back.
I'll just go back. I'll just go to Sushma now with the question that you've been in this industry for so long now. You've seen the evolution of the ecosystem, right? How does it feel to stay at one organization for a long time? I mean, can sometimes it become difficult? How does one break the glass ceiling being in their own organization? Because a lot of the time people ask this question: How do you evolve in your own ecosystem? What do you have to say on it?
Sure. So you just made me sound like a dinosaur, right? Like,
No.
I'm not that old, but still. But you're right. I have seen the entire ecosystem evolve and very up close. Have been in this space since 2006 and seen how the ecosystem has evolved. It was very, very nascent. I think the first few asset classes that evolved were the real estate asset classes, and then slowly it moved into other assets. And I think this is one of the best time for startups, as Pearl mentioned. So and things have been falling into place. The kind of talent that's coming in, the kind of capital that's flowing in, it's really exciting for fund managers to participate in the growth of this ecosystem. And so coming back to your question, how does it feel? How I've been in one place for so long, and why was I in this place for so long, right? Initially I came in thinking that I'll make some quick investments, build my portfolio, and then get out and keep moving on, like how people normally plan their career. But only after getting in here did I realize that investing is easy, right? It's actually seeing the results of your investment and creating value that is the tougher bit. And so I said, okay, let me wait for my first exit. Then after the first exit, you're like, okay, let me wait for my second exit. And then you realize that this you have to continue in this cycle. So I finished one full fund cycle. Then I said, if I can do this once, I can do this again. So now we are on our sixth fund. So when I joined Avishkar, we were just about 30 million of assets. And now it's been almost 10, 11 years here, and we are about $450 million in assets across multiple funds. So how did I stay relevant? I mean, it doesn't come by just being very comfortable where you are. We had to constantly, innovate. We had to constantly push ourselves beyond our comfort zones. So we could never, I could never sit back and say, oh, I know it all. I know how to make an investment now. So it's all cut, copy, paste from here. That has never happened. There's never a dull moment in investing, because every problem that I have faced is unique, and there's no one solution for these things. So So, how did I survive? I think the easiest answer for this is constantly innovating, learning, curiosity, trying to figure out new things. That's what has kept me going. And that's why I continue to stay here, because why would I want to move out, right? If I'm getting the best of challenges, the best of growth, the best of recognition, what more can one ask for?
I know that's true. So I'll just take it to Pearl now because Pearl, you talked about how you launched your own micro VC firm, but tell us more about what made you leave London and come to India because you're starting out on your own alone here. And second, how difficult was it to raise your first fund? I mean, how did you go about raising your first fund?
Yeah. Now, Pooja, I'll answer the first question first, because that's something that I had always known in my life that I would move back to India eventually. To Lavanya's point, from the day I had set foot in the US, there was always that immigrant dilemma like, do I want to live here and build a life here, or do I want to go back? So I knew always that, India was the final destination, and entrepreneurship, or in a way, something to do with entrepreneurship, is something I wanted to do. But being the overachievers, quote unquote, that we were, every single year I would say that, okay, I have something more to learn from here as well, and I would just continue to sort of go down one job after the other, or one role after the other, in the hope of building my profile further, until that sort of day when I actually moved to India and I realized that there was a lot happening. And by being outside, I was missing out on all of this in the hope of building my profile further. When I decided that, okay, it's time to actually make that move rather than waiting any longer. And, so my whole time in London, even though I was in London, in the back of my head, the idea was to continue to build Exemius. So in a way, I was continuing to sort of interact with people, continuing to build my thesis, so that when I move back, there is something that I can start with. And that's where I also came across Nupur, who was very instrumental in helping me sort of move back by giving me that last word of encouragement that you can move back, you can build your network and get started. So yeah, I think one step at a time, and it sort of happened, and I'm glad where we are today, because it has been an incredible journey in the last 1.5 years. We managed to raise a $10 million fund, also managed to make about 8 investments since March of this year, in a massively competitive market. I would say that we're proud of the portfolio companies that we have to showcase. So there's no looking back, and very happy with the decision that I made. And there is only a lot of things to look forward to now. So now coming to the second question that you asked, which is, I would say, a little heavier question, right? I mean, it was no cakewalk, raising the first check. But having said that, you only need a few people to believe in you. I mean, I was moving back. I was a solo woman, going out there to raise. And of course, I knew the challenges that I would face, because these challenges weren't unknown. Like, there were, even before I had started, there were people in my close network, people in my family who were questioning it. So I very well knew the kind of questions that would come. But luckily, there were a handful of people, we sort of talk about, and there is, I would say that there's no equal representation yet, but at the same time, we have come far from where we were, let's say, in the first half of 20,000, 2000, or this decade, I would say as well. Because now people recognize that there are women leaders to look up to, that have made a mark, and are not necessarily looking at women in a different light, or probably, are a little more accommodating when they see a solo woman come in. And that has really helped, or that had really helped me in the beginning. Having said that, there would always be those times where I would question myself. And we do have a few male advisors on our board, and sometimes I would insist that they come with me, not because I required them to pitch, because it added more gravitas to what I was saying. It added more seriousness to that meeting. And I wish that going forward, some of the women who would be raising after me will not be saying this. And I also wish that for the second fund, I don't feel like I need to, like, I would love to have more male advisors, but hopefully, like, I don't have to insist them to come with me just to add more gravitas. So as an ecosystem, we are moving in that direction. But I would say that, we have made quite a bit of progress already.
Sure, I agree to that. And I really hope the next fund is a bigger one. But I'll take you to Lavanya now. Why did you choose, the choices that you have made? Why did you choose to leave Goldman as a managing director and then moving on to Trifecta, which was doing venture debt when it started in the Indian ecosystem, and you went on there and you're raising that equity fund in the middle of the pandemic from your room. Talk us about that.
Absolutely, Pooja. Uh, they say that life can only be understood backwards, but it has to be lived forwards. And I think when you feel passion is guiding you in a certain direction, I think sometimes it's good to leap and pray that the net appears. I had my leap and pray moment, peak COVID. I was having the time of my life at Goldman Sachs. I think I still owe so much to that beautiful institution. It made me the professional I am today, gave me such a meritocratic playing ground for 13 years, a third of my life. But I think the passion that was pulling me towards Digital India was an understanding that companies I tracked over the last decade closely that were building big, important businesses catering to both consumer, SME, and enterprise were coming of age in a very real way. Coming of age in terms of revenue scale, in terms of maturity on unit economics, in terms of just the amazing talent that was flooding back in to address these large opportunities. And so I felt if I fast forward to the next couple of decades of my career, this is really the playground I want to be in. But I come from like a pretty risk averse, like Tam Bram family. Making MD at Goldman Sachs was a very distant dream, and I deeply cherished the moment when I attained that. But I kind of felt like the future was moving in a direction for me personally where I had to reinvent myself a little bit and stay very relevant to the opportunity. Sushma said earlier that there's a constant reinvention that is needed to be of service to the ecosystem. And I felt like this was the opportunity to go do that, and to make the 0 to 1 journey with some fantastic people. So I joined the founders of Trifecta to lead the launch of our growth and late stage equity fund, the first in the country. We put an audacious 200 million target for ourselves. And, we went about doing the best we could in under the craziest of circumstances. 8 hour Zoom calls with investors who typically would have wanted 3 meetings and, most of them in person to build trust and give us, the privilege of being custodians of capital. But God has been kind. We've raised most of our fund under these very unlikely circumstances. And we've also been the beneficiary of the liquidity that has flown into Digital India. So I think in our profession, it's always good to be smart. It's better to be lucky. And I think we, have a lot of grace in this journey.
Sure. I'll take this question to Sushma because Sushma, you've been around and you've raised you've seen so much of capital, but the thing is that impact investing is a little difficult choice that has been there in India. How did you go about talking about impact investing from India?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a question that is asked constantly. And we've been investing in impact sectors even before the term impact was coined, and what is known today. But so we were slightly ahead of our time when we were investing in these very difficult asset class. But thankfully now, I think the world is sitting up and noticing the need. Of course, the terms are now a little fuzzy: impact investing, SDG investing, ESG investing. There are all these alphabets floating around, but essentially they all mean, all converge somewhere to mean responsible investments responsible towards the planet and people. And we continue to do what we've always been doing, and a lot more focused manner. So that's something that hasn't changed for us.
True. Now I'll do one thing. I'll throw a generic question at all of you, and please feel free to answer all of you. But and the first question would be, because you're talking about women in private equity, as more women enter the investing ecosystem, how do you carve your own identity, your own niche? How do you define yourself to be? I'll start with Lavanya, and then we can move on to Pearl and then Sushma.
Absolutely. Pooja, in a world where capital is abundant, I think entrepreneurs are getting more and more selective about both the institution and the individual from whom they are taking capital. And I think it's very important for you as an investor to stand for something. And I think what you stand for will vary depending on the stage of investing, it will vary depending on your own investing philosophy. But I think increasingly, I'm finding that entrepreneurs are interviewing us as much as we are learning about their businesses, right? They want to understand how we will help. They want to understand whether they can count on us in times of crisis. They want to know from other founders who've had experience with us how we've behaved in good times and bad, right? They want to know what our investing philosophy is, what the horizon is. Are we companion capital? Are we silent capital that will, come and then allow the entrepreneur to do their job? So I think it's very important to be intentional in your creation of your image as an investor. And this is not something I had to do sitting inside Goldman Sachs. In fact, we wanted to be largely firm first because it's such a large firm, and the brand of the firm supersedes the brand of any one individual. But as I've gone out with Trifecta to raise this fund and enter into, like Pearl said, highly competitive situations where there are so many different pools of capital vying to get into some of the best companies being built out of digital India. I think it's a certain authenticity, a seriousness of purpose. Having been around the block a long time, being partners of various entrepreneurs through cycles has always helped. But I think those are some of the things I would say I'm thinking about more intentionally these days.
I echo some of the thoughts that Lavanya highlighted. I would say that the fact that there are so many women coming in, or more and more women coming in, is actually a positive. Because back in the day, when we had, let's say, one woman or a couple women that were part of the industry, they would often get identified as the woman investor. But today, the fact that we have several women and in decision making positions as well, it actually allows us to build an identity for ourselves that aligns with who we are, and it aligns with our investment philosophy, as well as how the kind of relationships that we want to build with uh, our entrepreneurs. And I think that is very important, because as an investor, we might be a male investor or a female investor, but our role is to find the right kind of entrepreneurs, know what framework we have, invest in them, and help them grow. And that is very distinct to who we are as an investor. And the fact that now the society can start looking at us just as an investor rather than a woman investor allows us to do that. And that's how I look at it. Whenever we sort of think about building our brand, whether as Eximius or whether as Paul Agarwal, I never really focus on me being a woman, but rather what we stand for and what is our view on the industries or the sectors that we are investing in. And we believe that in the long run, that is what's going to sort of stand out.
Sushma, your take on it?
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, to create my own identity, it's very important to be more aware and constantly be relevant in for today's day and age, right? Like, so when we say like impact investing, it has to be relevant today, right? And relevance is in digital first businesses. So can you marry digital first and impact together? And yes, and the kind of outcomes you see is huge. So that's how one can carve, or that's how I have carved my own identity, found a voice, found very important topics that marry my passion as well as where I see good outcomes. And I see gender sometimes tends to be slightly overrated. I'm sorry I'm saying this, but when we put on our investors hat, I don't think I'm a woman or someone is a man. We are discussing the merits of the business and how to create value and what could be the challenges, and it has nothing to do with gender. Right? So that's how we carve our own identity.
Sure. Going into the second question, what are the few tenets that you always follow while doing a transaction? I mean, and what would be the red flags in a transaction? The quick red flags that you see that you don't want to be here. What are the few tenets that you follow that, people who are listening to you, who want to get into investing, could learn from you?
Is that question to me?
Eh, these questions are for everyone. Everyone has to chip in.
Sure. No, okay. So very quickly, I'll go in first. I think some of the red flags for me is the promoter's skin in the game and integrity. Right. For me, these are two totally non-negotiable areas. And if somewhere I feel that either of these are lacking, I would rather step away, right? And it has always been in our good judgment that I have seen that you call it intuition, you can call it anything, but you just catch these red flags and you say that, fine, this is not the kind of investment we would want to go ahead with.
Yeah, I would say, that's definitely one of the red flags for us as well. If you don't have integrity, because in this investment world, once we put in capital, we take a very hands-off approach in the sense that we come in when an entrepreneur requires help from us, or we sort of look to add value where they require. And we don't want to be the kind of folks that are constantly sort of checking in on them and trying to make sure that the capital is being allocated in the right way or has been allocated where they had mentioned. Hence, it's very important for us to be able to do our jobs well, that they have the right sort of ethics and integrity, and we can trust them with the decision that they are taking. But outside of that, other thing that as an early stage investor, which is very, very important for us, that we spend a lot of time looking out for, is this particular entrepreneur opportunistic, or do they really have a passion for the problem statement that they're solving? Because in our view, see, market can be created. Of course, there are other factors to look into, which is market, product, team, so on and so forth. But these are all transitory and they can be created or changed. But one thing that cannot be changed is the passion that a particular entrepreneur has for the problem statement or for the area that they're solving. Often we see that, for example, if edtech is a buzz, then a lot of entrepreneurs who have no passion for education or improving education would get into it. So that's a huge red flag for us. We would stay away from it, because bull and bear cycles come. Sometimes it will be, the tide would be one way versus the other. But it's important that an entrepreneur sticks around and they know what they're solving for. So I would say that's a big focus area for us, and the lack of it is a red flag as well.
Lavanya, when you have returned like more than $1 billion from India, which is like a big feat. So, what is it that you think? What is your view on, what are the red flags when you see a transaction?
Fully agree with what Sushma and Pearl said. We are very entrepreneur-centric investors as well. I was in my former life. I continue to be, because ultimately they're the ones who deliver the magic, right? You can have the best thesis and the most precise Excel model, but if the entrepreneur doesn't have the grit, the determination, the hunger, and of course the integrity, then those outcomes are, distant dream. I think the way we think about, tenets is there's the entrepreneur, their passion and what they're trying to build. There's the market opportunity, which we do a lot of work around, because when you come in at growth to late stage, Pooja, that product market fit has been achieved, right? What Pearl talked about, the market can be created. That creation phase is largely past us. It is now in that phase of true scale. And scale could come from adjacencies, scale could come from geographies, scale could come in many different ways, but that's the journey we are providing capital for. So the second big piece we do a lot of work around is the market. We're not convinced of that size. We can't come in at the stage we're investing in. And the third piece is really maintaining discipline on entry and exit, because we're coming in at a stage where assets are fairly discovered, and in some cases even unicorn plus
valuations, right? So we have to have, as good custodians of capital to our limited partners, a line of sight to, can this be a standalone profitable business? Can this access permanent sources of capital? Or is it going to be of very big strategic importance to somebody? And can we, in a finite fund life, imagine that outcome and imagine multiple outcomes to give ourselves the confidence to come in and support for this leg of the journey?
Cool. You talked about LPs, and I wanted to come to that part, and this is a question for all three of you, whoever wants to pitch in, that as a woman investor, have you ever come across discrepancies in behavior when it comes with LPs or with the founders on the table? Have you ever faced something that, oh, they don't want to do a transaction with me, or they would have done with a male partner, something like that?
So if I might go in first, and I'd love to hear the others' experience, but I'll be quite upfront. I have not seen any such treatment, at least by LPs when you're fundraising. There might be some unconscious biases, but it is not very apparent. And also, what is very interesting that I have found is fund of fund teams tend to have more women, right? So they're largely more balanced teams, and Nupur also was one of such teams. So I guess it's because of the diversity already inbuilt into those teams. I at least I've never experienced those kind of situations. However, when it comes to on the other side, dealing with founders and entrepreneurs, there I have witnessed that the alpha in people come out, and there it tends to get a little challenging because uh, they believe that only they are the boss and they definitely don't want to hear a woman tell them about their business, or if their business is not doing well, how to fix things. And so there tends to be a little bit of a friction sometimes, but now people are being sensitive about these facts as well, and there is a little bit of correction that I'm seeing in even attitude towards women investors.
So, if I may jump in, fully echo what Sushma said on the LP side. Honestly, haven't seen any major pushback, and of course, I'm a newbie starting out on the fundraising journey. It's been a fantastic experience. I think been very easy to connect with various types of investors across the board. I think what I found sometimes in entrepreneur meetings, and this was more from a Goldman perspective than now, because now it's all on Zoom, and now everyone knows that I have come to Trifecta to launch this fund, so it's quite apparent that I'm leading the discussion. But when I was at Goldman, even when I was an MD, sometimes people would automatically assume that the guy in the room is the senior guy and would start talking to him. And I think one thing I learned early on in my career, being one of the few women or only woman in most rooms, is that it's okay. Like, it's okay if people make some assumptions. It's up to you to correct them and correct them quickly. And I can be in boss lady mode very quickly and steal the mic back and be like, I'm in charge and I'm going to set the agenda for this meeting, right? And sometimes actually let the junior people run the meeting, because that's perfectly fine too. But I don't allow that to like throw me off my game or like change the cadence. I want to have a great meeting. I want to connect with this entrepreneur, and I want to make sure I get the insights I want out of this situation. So I try my best when I know it's unconscious and it's not being done with nefarious intent, not to let that weigh on my mind overly, but at the same time do my bit to let them know, right, who's actually in charge here.
That sounds interesting. Pearl, what do you have to say?
Yeah, actually, it's very interesting because until today, the only person I had shared this experience with was probably my partner. But it's sort of super interesting to see that both Lavanya and Sushma have a similar experience. Because on the LP side, we are, ourselves haven't faced any issues at all, right? Like, in fact, they're very forthcoming, very accommodating. On the entrepreneur side as well, what we have noticed is that there is a little bit of unconscious bias. maybe not conscious but unconscious. And it's a very sort of similar experience to Lavanya's, where the entrepreneur knows that I'm the decision maker in the room, but probably looks at an associate or another person who's a male to talk during the entire time. And you really have to sort of go and steal the stage and say that, hey, like I'm the one who's going to make the decision ultimately, or looks around to see who's ultimately going to sign the SHA, because they're not sure who will be the signing authority. Like if you see my name there, I'm the one who's going to be signing it. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of that unconscious bias, and I don't blame them, because they haven't seen a lot of folks in that position before. But as that changes, I'm pretty sure that the attitude will change as well.
True. I think that will change in the VC and also in the tech space, because now that more women in tech space also. One more question I wanted to ask, according to data, as Sushma just talked about the fund of funds thing, I was actually going through PitchBook data and I saw that there are more women in fund of funds than there are in VC and then there are in PE. So it just keeps funneling in that format. I just want to understand, as there are fewer women in PE in VC ecosystem, how do you plan to boost the participation, because you are at a place where you can change things? So how do you plan to involve more women in your teams or in your organization or stuff like that?
So Pooja, I'm quite proud to say the fact that the new fund that Avishkar is looking to launch is going to be a 2x flagship fund. So what it means, and it's the first fund in the entire South Asia to be recognized as 2x flagship. And what that means is, as a fund manager, we have diversity within our teams, from decision making to our entire team. Our investment team is almost 50% women. And also the kind of businesses that we invest in are either led by women entrepreneurs, or have significant diversity within teams, or they focus on women-centric products and services, right? And in spite of all that, they have all been generating good returns, commercial returns, right? So saying that, if I'm guessing, if we are able to do it and we are able to consistently show outcomes, it should not be so difficult for other funds to inculcate at least part of these aspects. So there is a need, but we are definitely seeing a change in the right direction, as even Pearl mentioned. Fund of funds are also playing a very key instrumental role. Institutional investors are pushing fund managers to also be open to diversity, and that is being seen, as I think Rochelle mentioned early on, that the first port of call is the funnel, right? So at least starting point, start bringing in more women into the workforce, because then you don't have to wake up later 5 years down the line and say, oh, there are no women in senior teams, right? I mean, they're not going to be airdropped from somewhere. So that is the first step, and I think we are moving in the right direction.
Lavanya, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think just one thing to add, fully agree with what Sushma said about widening the funnel. I think if you start to encode diversity of thought also into the fabric of your decision making, I think from the beginning, the organization grows to be inclusive, as opposed to you grow an organization quite homogeneously, thinking, it's easier to do all of this when I'm at a certain scale and when life is not so chaotic. So I think taking the tougher steps earlier on, be be that discussions with portfolio companies on what it is they should be doing on various aspects of ESG, or in your own investment teams, making sure that you look at a wide variety of resumes to convince yourself that you looked at enough candidates of all different types before making your decision. I think encoding that early on is very helpful, even if it's harder to do when you're on that hyper growth 0 to 1 journey. That's the only thing I would really.
Pearl, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I would say that, Shushma and Lavanya have covered quite a bit of ground there, but we have a very similar approach as well. Of course, the companies that we invest in are at very early stage. We are typically coming in at the idea stage, or when they're just two co-founders. At that point, the fact that we have regular conversations with them, we do sort of try to see that they're thinking about a more inclusive team. But where we can really make an impact is within our own team, where we take a very gender neutral meritocratic approach. We make sure that when we are sort of hiring, we get as many women as men as possible. It's completely based on how they are performing or how the interviews go, and follow a similar process going forward as well. To Shushma's point, we cannot have more people later. The funnel is going to get smaller, right? It's going to get narrower as we go up. So we cannot have more people in senior roles if we don't train them at the entry level. And that's the exact approach that we take. And even when it comes to sort of promoting, we focus only on how they are performing and what their vision is going forward. Never have we ever taken any other sort of view outside of what their personal life would look like, or anything of that sort, which we have heard that they have faced in the past. So I think once you make these little tweaks, this can go a long way.
Sure. As part of the WinPE discussion today, one question that is being placed is one change that you would like to see in the industry as a Gen 2.0 leader. Because you're a Gen 2.0 leader, what is that one change that you would like to see in the ecosystem? And after this, I'll take the questions that have come in from the comment section. And I think there's some very interesting ones out there. But before I go there, last one change that you would like to see in the industry as a Gen 2.0 leader, and I will let Lavanya start this and then go to Sushma and then Pearl.
Sure. So I think, capital is like one of the main factors of production for entrepreneurs, especially in digital India where I play. And I would love to see it flow into very diverse businesses and founders, and not just through a gender lens, but, really slicing across like urban, rural, socio-economic and linguistic barriers. I think that would be, a wonderful thing to see in the coming weeks, months, years.
So, the Gen 2.0 leader, the way I see it is, see, the Gen Z crowd who are coming into the workforce are very, very different lot. And what gets them motivated is very different from what probably got even the millennials motivated, right? And the Gen Z crowd are all very, very particular about outcomes towards the planet, towards the people. And so how does a leader inspire this crowd to work for a productive good? So a leader who's more woke, who's more diverse, who's more inclusive, I think those are the kind of leaders I believe are the leaders of tomorrow, who will be able to create positive outcomes.
I think from my side, the change that I would like to see is probably very simple. As say a newbie into the ecosystem, I would say the only thing that can take us far from here is once everybody starts to talk about the fact that there is unconscious bias, and one has to sort of be aware of it. I think that's something that during my discussions with multiple people, I have realized that folks still either aren't aware of or don't want to acknowledge. And I think that's the only change that I would like to see in the near term, because once you're aware, then all the other changes can start.
Sure. I'll ask one question that has come on the comment section. First one would be, what is your leadership mantra for young professionals or people who are starting out? Who is going to take that?
Lavanya, you wanna? I can.
Sure. Happy. I think one piece of advice I have is, when you put your name on a piece of work, just make it excellent, because I think your reputation as a professional is built through these micro tasks and the micro impressions people generate of you. And so I think standing for excellence is something that will open up untold opportunities. And you may think that the small things may not matter as much, but I think they all add up in a very powerful way. And we know the power of compounding, being investors. So I think the power of compounding of those micro actions and just standing for excellence is something I would heavily encourage young professionals to consider?
Um, I would say the two P's are very, very important for people who are starting off their career: passion and perseverance. And I think if you do believe in both of these and continue putting all your energy towards that, you will definitely see positive, change.
The only thing I would add to that is, in my experience, I have seen that young folks today are not as much focused on relationships, especially work relationships, as much, in my view, they should be. And I always say that, the life cycle of any job will be 3 to 4 years. Probably a startup will be 10 years, but your work life cycle would be 50 years. So they need to start taking a longer term view of their relationships and build it in that direction. Instant gratification is good for grocery delivery, but not for relationships.
That's a good one, Pearl. Okay, now one question that has come in from a listener. I mean, I really found it interesting. What are the top implementable actions to influence gender diversity in your firm? Will each one of you please take this?
Sure. I'd say the top one for immediate impact is hiring. And, I think the second order impact of being a woman professional who's now been working in finance and investing for 16 years is every team I've been a part of has become more diverse after I've joined the team. SPO partners, the next year we hired another female associate. Goldman Sachs, when I joined as employee number 3, I was the only woman in the team. We subsequently hired another very high quality woman professional. The next year, another one. And not because, we set out to do that, but because I think we were also able to attract talent because they saw visibly that these employers were friendly to all types of talent. And I think at Trifecta, I'm so proud to say our first hire was, kick-ass woman investment professional. She's a silver medalist from Bix Pilani and, seasoned MBA from IMB. So we got top quality talent, and she was super excited to join us because, she liked the fact that we were going to be a diverse team.
So, see, for us, hiring has never been a challenge. We've always got very high quality talent and women talent in our teams. Where we would like to spend more of our energy is in retaining this talent, because we do understand that the challenges professional women face is slightly different from their male counterparts. So, to have a slightly more easy work environment with pro women policies, I think that would be the first step we would take in that direction.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that, even what we have experienced is that, if you're hiring freshers, especially, there are quite a few women as well as men that you can get into the funnel. But retaining women is very difficult. And in our view, it's also because often women don't feel that they can express themselves and what they want from there. And we have to agree that, women's personal lives are a little different from men. They probably are looking to get married, have babies, so on and so forth. They feel like they can often not talk about it and hence drop out and pursue something that's a little less rigorous. And that is something we would want to change, where we would want it to be normal to talk about what you want from your personal life and how that can integrate with your professional life as well.
True. Makes sense. There's one question that has come in just now. It says, how does having more women change the rules of the game? And does it bring fresh perspective? Like if you're looking at a transaction, because I remember this from a male partner who had told me once that, they got a transaction of a sanitary transaction, and they did not look at it seriously because they could not understand how big the market space could be. And he went home and he told his wife about it, and the wife then said, look, this is how it is. And then he again came back and they again spoke to the founder as a real story when he was telling me some time back. So I just want to understand from you, do you think that, having more women change the rules of the game? There are more kind of businesses that you can look at freshly than others could. Have you seen that yourself?
all the time, all the time. So even like the big baskets of the world and all your grocery delivery, vegetable delivery, right? It's the women who take these decisions in the house. And so when first time when someone presented these kind of deals to us, our male colleagues kind of rubbished it, saying, what's the big deal? My wife anyway goes to the market and picks up the vegetables. Who wants it in half an hour, or who wants it in 1 hour, and who will order it over phone? They didn't get it that, for working women, there is a certain convenience associated with, ordering online, ordering over phone. So I guess, some things are just not intuitive. And so you need to have a diverse approach to looking at problems. And the good news is that the solutions out there are pro women and men, right? It's making life easy for everybody. But who's going to appreciate it more? Probably women will get to see it first, right? So that's why having these kind of diverse teams, and I'm not talking diversity just in terms of gender, even age diversity, right? Like sometimes the younger folk in our team are able to see things so intuitively that is not obvious to us. So those kind of changes are required. Hence, diversity is important.
So, Pooja, not just perspective, but also returns, right? So, I was looking at some research in advance of this panel, and there was a Harvard Business Review article which said that they did this large study on the impact of diversity on venture capital fund returns. And they said that venture capital firms that increase their proportion of female partner hires by like just 10%, okay, not a large amount, saw on average 1.5% spike in fund returns, which is very large if you think about it, and had 9.7% more profitable exits. So this is not just fresh perspectives, it's actually tangible investment returns. And I therefore think it is changing the rules of the game dramatically. And I think it's only fair that there's big representation of who ultimately is spending the money. And exactly like we just discussed, I feel it's so important to have decision making representation of all types.
No, absolutely. I feel like there's such good insights coming that I have very little to add. But if you look at it, the best investors today are consumers. Whether it is we look at gaming, health tech, fintech, you get the best insights out of consumers who want to use the product or have used the product. And if we start to sort of focus on areas that women are consuming, it's inevitable that we require more and more women to be in that decision making position. Women health is an area that we focus on. If I were to take a pitch deck and give it to one of the male associates or principals, they'd have no idea what they're looking at or talking about and how deep the problem statement is, which only a woman will be able to identify with. Hence, it's important that the areas that you're focusing on, you have representation from the consumer segment of that area, and whatever that might be. And that's the way we also look at it or build our business, build our team.
Sure. I think it's been nearly an hour that we've been talking. So, but this is one last question, or let's say not a question, one last thing that you would want to say before you leave. And a lot of young women who are entering the field, because I've been meeting a lot of, because I was doing a story some time back and I came across a lot of people who are analysts now who want to make it big in the ecosystem, but sometimes they're stuck at, who do I go to ask these questions? Now, how is it that you are trying to make it easy for your teams or for people, women general outside? And what are your last thoughts before you leave?
Lavanya?
I love it. I just got volunteered. Uh, I think my parting thoughts are, it's a wonderful time to be an investment professional. The ecosystem has truly come of age in so many ways, and there's so much work that we can do. There's so many underrepresented consumer groups that are getting access through the internet to choice, to convenience, to democratized access to education. There is so much we can participate in that it's like truly, I think, the golden decade to be an investment professional. So my call to all of you is to come join our fraternity. We want you to rush in very large numbers, and we will welcome you with open arms. We will try our best to lift as we climb, and we've been the beneficiary of so much help, support, and mentorship that it's I take it as a very serious responsibility to do my little bit to pay it forward.
Um,
Sushma,
so
I'll let you speak. Yeah.
Yeah, no. So I say that WinPE platform, right? I mean, in our early careers, we didn't have a forum like this where I could interact with such wonderful women, peers, brainstorm with them, talk to them about my challenges, my personal journey. We had to chart things out on our own. But now with forums like WinPE, and thanks to Nupur for creating something like this, there is a go-to forum, right? And as you're saying that there is awareness, I think awareness is the first step. Pearl also mentioned that at least now people are recognizing that there is a problem with diversity. Forums like this will help us fix that problem. And so, we are all eager to work with more women folk out there.
My parting thoughts would be that along the way, and this happened with me as well, there will be a lot of people who might not believe in you, but there will be a few people that believe in you and the fact that you can make it happen. So listen to the ones that you need to listen to help you move forward, and don't focus on all the noise that comes around, because it's bound to be there. There will be, just turn it into white noise and focus on your goal and keep moving, because there are several women who have achieved it, and you can do it as well.
Cool. Thank you so much Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you, Lavanya, Sushma, and Pearl. And I think I'll end it here.
So thank you, Pooja. It was a great session. It was great listening to Sushma and Lavanya as well.
Okay, I can see
Ladies,
Rochelle back, so I'll give the floor back to Rochelle.
Ladies, thank you so much for your time, Pooja, for the wonderful moderation, and Pearl, Lavanya, and Shushma. It's wonderful to know you as peers and, for what you've achieved. It's fantastic that you are an inspiration to all the women who are on the fence thinking about private equity and being intimidated, but looking at you and saying, no, it is possible. And for all those women who are in the ecosystem who can tap out through WinPE and say hello to you and learn from you. So thank you so much for your time and for your nuggets of wonderful wisdom.
Thank you so
And
much.
for all the audience who have been listening to us, this was a fantastic session. We have two more coming up in January and February as a run up to celebrate 2 years of WinPE together. Please be on the lookout for these sessions and please attend them with an overwhelming response. We're always there on LinkedIn for your comments and for your suggestions. Thank you so much and have a pleasant evening.